Hey everyone, this is Alana with FidgetHaven Reviews, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Axis Micro and the Axis Nano from FocusWorks. Now before I talk about the spinners themselves, I do want to talk a little bit about, some background information that has been going on lately. There's been a lot of talk in the community about the Axis Micro spinner. There's a little bit of a stigma on the name of the Axis Micro, and I guess I just want to do my part in clearing that up if I can. So, to make a very long story short, the Axis Micro used to be sold from a company called Last Room Standing, and they had several very successful pre-orders. And after a while, I guess things started to fall apart, and people were giving them money for pre-orders, and that money was not going to actually making the product or getting the product to the people. And of course, after months and months of this, and I'm not talking about like 1 or 2 months, I'm talking about like 7, 8 months, everything really came to a head. People started posting outside of the Last Room Standing specific group about the issues. A lot of the community got involved, and everything just blew up. So thankfully, Jordy Wallace, who is the machinist behind the Axis Micros, he is an active part of the community. He saw not only the love for the Axis Micro, but also the frustration with everything that was going on. And with some hard work and some serious voodoo magic, he ended up working out a deal with the people at Last Room Standing. And now he is not only the machinist for the Axis Micro, but he's also the person who is in charge of them, who's selling them, who owns them. So Last Room Standing is completely out of the picture, thankfully. And Jordy has just been working so hard over the past few months to not only get those orders that hadn't been fulfilled, but also to make it his own improvements on the Axis Micro himself. So he's making some pretty cool changes, which I look forward to going over with you. But I did want to kind of get that backstory out of the way because, as I said, I do know that there's a stigma around the Axis Micro name. I know that it has maybe made some people not purchase one or not even look into finding out information on the Axis Micro, but I do want you guys to rest assured that it is now in somebody else's hands, very capable hands, and everything is going super smoothly. So I invite you all to go check out the FocusWorks Facebook page, get to know Jordy, get to know the moderators. Customer service is great. The people who are working for him are great, and just any of the things that you may have heard about in the past have thankfully been corrected. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some spinners. So as I mentioned, I have the Axis Micro and the Axis Nano here. I'm going to go over them separately because even though they are technically the same spinner, just different sizes, I find that they're very different from each other, and it's just going to be easier to do one than the other without getting confused. So I'm going to put this little guy away and I will come back to him a little bit later on. So right now I'm going to be going over the Axis Micro. This is the new R188 version. I do actually have some of the 608 original versions from Last Room Standing. I got them a couple of weeks before everything hit the fan with them, and I made the decision not to review them at the time because I knew they were still taking orders, and I didn't want to take a risk of potentially generating traffic for them, only to have those people get ripped off. So I am glad that I have them because I can do a comparison and there are slight differences between them. But overall, they are fairly similar to each other. Now, the version that I have here, I did take out the 608 and I changed it for an R188 bearing. They are my preference over the 608, but they are the same type. So this one is stainless steel with tungsten weights, as is this one. The only difference is this one comes natively with the R188 and this one doesn't. The other difference beside what they come with as a bearing that I've noticed is that the little edges around where the recessed balls are, it's been smoothed more than it had been previously. I've heard a lot of complaints about these corners being sharp or rough and people either getting soreness or just pain from spinning them. And I have to say that I haven't noticed that at all with the newer one. My previous one is sharper. I can definitely notice the difference between them. I assume that this one has just been rounded off a little bit more, but I have to say that I don't have any soreness with it whatsoever, and there really aren't any hot spots. Aside from the 608 and the lack of the set screw, that's really it that's changed about them. The biggest change across the board, I suppose, is that they are all coming with the tungsten weights now, instead of it being an optional thing that you can pay extra for. So these can be purchased on the FocusWorks websites in aluminum, stainless steel, brass, and copper, with titanium balls for between $70 and $180, depending on the metals and the finishes that you get. This one here has a spin diameter of about 2 inches, and it weighed in at 83.6 grams on my scale. Now, because it doesn't have any hot spots or sharpness, I find that it's easy and comfortable to spin no matter what your preference is, whether you're a flicker, or you pull from the face, or you pull from just one of the arms. I do find that it is quite comfortable to spin. The buttons remain the same 22 millimeter design. They come with threading. There was a period of time where you could get magnetic buttons, and I'm kind of thankful that they stopped because there were a lot of problems with them. They were very difficult to take off. Not that it's an issue with every type of magnetic buttons, but these ones were notorious for having some issues. So the buttons are threaded. Now, one thing to note about the buttons, and I suppose the spinner itself, is that it does come with its own proprietary bearing lock system. Because of the bearing lock, the bearing is very slightly offset, and the shoulders on the buttons, like near where the threading are, where the female portion is, they're not even. So there's only one configuration you can put the buttons on. If you put them on the wrong way, like putting the female side where the bearing lock is, you are going to end up getting rubbing, unfortunately. Here, I will demonstrate. Yeah, that's not good. So if you want to use aftermarket buttons with them, you are going to have to modify them slightly by using either O-rings or washers. I do not know what size or how many you need, but I'm sure you could probably find that information in Spin Space or the Daily Fidget or the FocusWorks group. I don't love the buttons. I have to be honest. They are some of my least favorite buttons. They're extremely flat, which I prefer to have slightly concave buttons, and the design on them is one that I dislike. I've had this design on other buttons, like the Invader drone has very similar ones, and I find those incredibly uncomfortable too. My fingers tend to, I guess, squish into these little grooves because of the size between them. They're quite large, and after a while I do get a little bit of a bullseye, indent on my finger. They're kind of scratchy when you rub them, and they're just not the greatest buttons. Some people love them, some people don't. I happen to be in the don't camp. They do have a lot of grip, so if that's something that you're looking forward to, you will find it in these buttons. Now, funny story, as I mentioned, this does come with a proprietary bearing lock. And when I received the package, there was this little item in there with it. And I pulled it out, and I was wondering, I was really scratching my head, what could this thing possibly be? And I noticed that it had little nubs on the bottom, so I figured, oh, it's a little stand. That's nice that they can, they included it for you to hold your spinner on. Well, it wasn't until I pulled the buttons off and I saw that these little prongs matched up with the holes in there that I realized that this is actually the bearing lock key. So yeah, that's a fun story to share with you guys about how dumb I can be sometimes. But it is a great key. It is a great bearing lock design. I do prefer press fit bearings. This spinner does feel like it has a bearing lock system. I don't know how to describe the difference, but there absolutely is a difference between press fit or slip fit and bearing lock systems. Now, as far as these go, I do have an appreciation for this one. It is well done. The metals are all high quality. It just feels very sturdy, and it feels like your bearing is very well held in there. Not that there's an issue with Chinese manufactured ones. I just find this to be a little bit higher quality. Now, the downside to having a proprietary system is that you can't just go out and buy one of the keys that works with one of the Chinese manufactured spinners. But on the plus side, it does come with one, so you're not going to have to worry about, how do I open this thing? So it's extremely easy to open. You just line little prongs up with the holes in the lock and you spin. And there you go. So it does make it very easy for maintenance and cleaning. I do recommend taking the bearing out if you're going to clean it, just to make sure that no water gets stuck in there. But it is super easy to open and take out. Now the bearing that comes with it is a 10-ball R188 hybrid ceramic bearing. And as many of you guys know, I do tend to change out my bearings pretty much as soon as I get a new spinner. I've fallen in love with Zen spins and with SBV2s, and those are the ones that I tend to stick to. However, I do have to say I like this hybrid ceramic. I saw somebody compare it to pretty much like a 608 ceramic feeling, and I say that it does mimic it pretty well. It has that kind of light grittiness and rumbliness to it that 608s have, and I like that about this. I actually do like the native 608 in this one. I don't know if I mentioned that I have one, but I do have one. Although R188s are my preference, I do like it in this spinner. There is something nice and classic about it. So if you're looking to have maybe an R188 spinner with a similar feel to a 608, this bearing does a pretty good job in this spinner. Once again, you know I don't really care about spin times, but I did do spin time test. The average was about 3 minutes and 26 seconds. So I have no complaints about it. I felt that it spun well, it spun fast, and it does feel nice in the hand when it's spinning. So overall, I am happy with this. If you are the type of person who prefers press fit, you may not enjoy this as much, but if it doesn't make a difference to you, then you're not going to notice at all. It is very comfortable to spin. It is quiet. It's really, really nice looking. Honestly, this was the first spinner that I had ever come across when I found spinners, and I've just been enamored with the way that it looks ever since. I love the way that the light plays off the body. I love the way that the light plays off of the weights. It's just phenomenal to look at no matter what. Now, it is on the expensive side. It's not going to be a budget spinner, so it isn't for everyone. It's not the kind of thing, you're going to want to keep in your car or as a spare. But it is a great spinner. Now, for me to say if it's worthy of the price, honestly, I'm at a point where I don't know if things are worth it or not. I think that if I were given the option, I probably would not purchase one of these unless they were changed to press fit, only because for $150-ish for a stainless steel model, it's just out of my price range for the feel that it provides. Does that mean that it's not worth it? Absolutely not. They're made in Canada. The person who does them, he's a one-man show, and he just does a fantastic job. But to figure out if it's worth the price, that's entirely up to you guys. So now that I've covered this one, I am going to go over the Nano, which, oh my goodness, it is just the cutest little thing. But it is super different from this one. So obviously it's considerably smaller. It has a spin diameter of about 1 inch, and it weighs 11.25 grams on my scale. Just to compare to this is 2 inches spin diameter and 83.6 grams on my scale. So there is a huge difference between the two. This one is also stainless steel with tungsten balls. It has very similar styled buttons. They are obviously smaller to match, and they measure 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters in diameter. They are threaded, just like the other ones are. However, because there's no bearing lock system in this, they're not offset. However, even if you wanted to use your own buttons without having them custom made, you wouldn't be able to, because the bearing in this one is a much, much, much smaller FR168 bearing. It is stainless steel with stainless races and cages. The bearing itself is not bad at all, especially for the tiny weight of this. As I mentioned, it's only 11.25 grams, and my average spin time was 1 minute and 20 seconds. So for something so small and so light, I have to give it kudos, because that is a pretty phenomenal spin time. Now, as far as how I feel about this, it is comfortable to spin just like the other one, whether you're pulling from the face or whether you're flicking. But as you can see, the size is very tiny and it is somewhat fiddly. If you have larger hands, it's probably not going to be the right spinner for you. I have to say, I am impressed that I can spin it with nails. Granted, they're not as long as they have been in the past, but I can spin it without any problems whatsoever. The buttons have a good enough height that my nails don't rub along the edge of the spinner. Back to talking about the spin. It doesn't feel like a traditional spinner. Now, there was a company out... it was sometime last year. I don't think that they're still making spinners at this time. But there was a company called Smart Manufacturing on Etsy, and they made a very, very small navel brass spinner. Now, if you've tried that one, that's the closest to this one that I can describe. If you're looking for a mini spinner or a micro spinner that feels like a spinner, this isn't going to be the one for you. This one feels a little bit more like a novelty than an actual spinner. Now, I do find myself reaching for it. I do play with it. I do carry it with me, but it's not the spinner that I reach for if I'm sad or if I'm anxious or if I really need to concentrate. It just is kind of a novelty and it's absolutely adorable. And I love pulling it out to show to people, but it doesn't have that spinner feel. I can't compare it to something like a Kepler Mini or a Mini Triton. It feels completely different than that, and it does feel kind of toy-like. I mean, I guess all spinners are toys, but it just doesn't have that real spinner feel. When these were sold, they were sold for about $80. They haven't been sold again. They've only been released once. And a little birdie did whisper in my ear that they might be coming out with exotic versions. Now, I would love an exotic version because it is an adorable collectible piece. As a functional spinner for $80, I don't think that the value is there. Other things that are this size are considerably less expensive. And for a more novelty type of spinner, I just don't feel that the value is there. Now, would I still go out and get one had one not been sent to me? I probably would, just because I am a collector and I do like my really big collection. But again, it's not going to be for everybody. It could be used at the office if you're looking for a very discreet spinner. But again, it just isn't going to give you the same impact as something like this. So yeah, so that is my review. I am pleased with these. I do enjoy them. I do find myself playing with them. The value is something that you guys are going to have to pick for yourself because I just cannot, come up with anything specific for this, whether it would be worth it to you guys or not. So really, it's up to you. Yeah. So these are the Axis Micro and the Axis Nano from FocusWorks. I hope that I went over everything. This is a very, very, very long video, and I do apologize for that, but I felt that there was just so much to cover. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to post them in the comments section below. I'm always happy to hear from you. I'm going to put a link in the description to both the FocusWorks store and to their Facebook page, so you can go and check it out and get to know the people there. And I'll also post a link below to high-res photos of these. So that concludes our review today. I really, really, really greatly appreciate you guys watching. I hope that you were able to learn something today, and I hope that you all have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye!